A leading health expert in China says a new coronavirus that is spreading in the country can be transmitted between humans. Zhong Nanshan is the director of the State Key Laboratory of Respiratory Disease. He recently visited Wuhan, where nearly 200 people have been infected with the virus so far. Zhong says 14 medical staff contracted the virus from one carrier, and the infection is likely to spread.
A SARS-like virus, which has infected hundreds in China, has now reached the United States. Airports around the world are stepping up health screenings on passengers arriving from Wuhan, China, the epicenter of the outbreak. Now, 9 people have died in China. At least 470 there are infected. And there are fears the coronavirus will spread during the busy Lunar New Year travel period. Besides the US, cases have also been reported in South Korea, Japan, and in Thailand.
Hello, everyone. You've heard public health officials and myself say many times that we need to flatten the curve or plank it. But what does that actually mean? Well, when we talk about the curve, we're talking about the number of people who get sick over a certain period of time. Our Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Tam, and other public health officials across the country and around the world are tracking this information and mapping it out. When a lot of people get sick in a short period of time, the curve rises faster. If that happens, it's more likely that we'll surpass the level at which the healthcare system will be overwhelmed.
The World Health Organization says it hopes governments will use lockdowns to significantly flatten the curve. Addressing the media via video link, the WHO's Tedros Ghebreyesus also outlined a number of steps taken by governments to stop the coronavirus pandemic.
Overcome many pandemics and crises before. We will overcome this one too. The question is how large a price we will pay.
Good evening. The coronavirus is the biggest threat this country has faced for decades, and this country is not alone. All over the world, we're seeing the devastating impact of this invisible killer. And so tonight, I want to update you on the latest steps we're taking to fight the disease and what you can do to help. And I want to begin by reminding you why the UK has been taking the approach that we have. Without a huge national effort to halt the growth of this virus, there will come a moment when no health service in the world could possibly cope, because there won't be enough ventilators, enough intensive care beds, enough doctors and nurses. And as we've seen elsewhere in other countries that also have fantastic healthcare systems, that is the moment of real danger. To put it simply, if too many people become seriously unwell at one time, the NHS will be unable to handle it, meaning more people are likely to die, not just from coronavirus, but from other illnesses as well. That is why people will only be allowed to leave their home for the following very limited purposes. Shopping for basic necessities as infrequently as possible. One form of exercise a day, for example, a run, walk, or cycle, alone or with members of your household. Any medical need to provide care or to help a vulnerable person, and travelling to and from work, but only where this is absolutely necessary and cannot be done from home. But in this fight, we can be in no doubt that each and every one of us is directly enlisted. Each and every one of us is now obliged to join together to halt the spread of this disease, to protect our NHS, and to save many, many thousands of lives.
Gatherings of 10 or more, we want them to avoid any unnecessary travel. We want them to work from home if at all possible, or not go in. And the reason why we framed it this way is because when we look at the data, our numbers are where Italy's were 2 to 3 weeks ago. So we really have a choice to make right now as a nation. Do we want to go the way of Italy and see our numbers increase rapidly? Or do we want to go the way of South Korea and China, who aggressively leaned in the mitigation measures and were actually able to level off their peak and are now seeing significantly decreased numbers of cases?
We are all in this together. No member state will safely emerge from the crisis until everyone does.
What was the best strategy? Lock down the elderly, the most vulnerable, test, alert, protect. None of that is sufficient in the current situation. We need to take it further.
We must act now, as we have done without hesitation. Obviously, they were painful choices. Because there is no restrictive measure that has no impact now.
We know now that we need to reduce contact again, and with this, lower the risk of infection. Because of this, we need another national effort for the month of November.
Pfizer executives are calling it one of the biggest medical breakthroughs in the past 100 years. A COVID vaccine developed in just 6 months, 90% effective in the group of drug trial volunteers who were known to be infected.
All right, breaking news. Pharmaceutical giant Pfizer just announced moments ago that its coronavirus vaccine is 95% effective and that they will apply for FDA emergency use approval within days. It comes just as the U.S. recorded the deadliest day of the pandemic in 6 months. CNN Chief Medical Correspondent.
Good evening. It's great to start another week with all of you at home. And we begin tonight with that new hope in the battle against the coronavirus. 1 week after that news from Pfizer, tonight news on a second vaccine. Moderna announcing its vaccine is nearly 95% effective. And it comes just as the virus is spreading across this country at alarming speed.
In Florida, those 65 and older and healthcare workers exasperated by the vaccine rollout here. Those who are eligible for the first round of shots waiting up to 8 hours in first-come, first-served lines.
Some of the most extraordinary queues we've seen are at the Southwestern Sydney Vaccination Centre. Tom Hartley is there at Glen Quarry Town Centre in Macquarie Fields. Tom, what's the wait like tonight?
Partying into the night, celebrating new freedoms. Crowds gathered on the streets of Spanish cities in the early hours of Sunday as the national state of emergency ended.
It's really very moving. I keep thinking, wow, how great to finally be able to connect, to sing, to have a good time, to say hi. It's an important moment.
Here in Barcelona, police had the strange task of moving people on after the last curfew began at 10 p.m, only to let them back after midnight. Infection rates have fallen and vaccinations are speeding up. Now, all except 4 of Spain's regions have scrapped local curfews. Bans on travel between regions are also being lifted. At Madrid's main train station, some were setting off to see family, others waiting for loved ones to arrive.
But a particularly effective technique is to use waves of terror. Under this technique, the sowing of fear is staggered with periods of calm. But each of these periods of calm is followed by the manufacturing of an even more intense spell of fear. And on the process goes. Or as Mirlu writes, each wave of terrorizing creates its effects more easily after a breathing spell than the one that preceded it, because people are still disturbed by their previous experience. Morality becomes lower and lower, and the psychological effects of each new propaganda campaign become stronger. It reaches a public already softened up.
Good afternoon. We start with breaking news this hour. Scientists stress that more research is required, but early findings from Public Health England suggest that vaccines might not be effective in reducing the transmissibility of the Delta variant of coronavirus.
A major announcement just moments ago that should give pause to every person, vaccinated or not, about the state of this pandemic in the United States. First, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, is revising its mask guidance. They're now recommending those in high or substantial virus transmission areas, even those who are fully vaccinated, wear a mask again when you are indoors.
Makes mass formation or crowd formation the exact equivalent of hypnosis. So all people who have been describing, who have been studying mass formations such as Gustave Le Bon, for instance, McDougall, Canetti, have remarked that mass formation is not similar to hypnosis, that mass formation is exactly equal to hypnosis. Mass formation is a sort of hypnosis. So what happens is that at that moment, when people experience this mental intoxication, It doesn't matter anymore whether the narrative is correct or wrong, even blatantly wrong. What matters is that it leads up to this mental intoxication. And that's why they continue to go along with the narrative, even if they could know by thinking for 1 second that it is wrong. That is the central mechanism of mass formation, and that makes it so difficult to destroy it.
We've heard this before. Health officials in the U.S. are paying close attention to what's happening in Europe right now. Coronavirus cases are rising to new levels there, despite the widespread rollout of vaccines.
We start with some breaking news out of Austria. Chancellor Alexander Schallenberg has announced a full nationwide lockdown starting Monday, and it will become the first European country to make COVID-19 vaccines mandatory.
Have remarked that mass formation is not similar to hypnosis, that mass formation is exactly equal to hypnosis.
I think it comes much too late. And I think it's very unfair of people who are not for health reasons not taking a vaccine, because that's obvious, you know. But all the others, they're crazy.
No, I don't think. We had it for everybody some times ago, so I think it's now for a special group, and they should do it.
No, I think it's the right way because the cases are getting higher and higher and higher, and the problems are the non-vaccinated people.
Early findings from Public Health England suggest that vaccines might not be effective in reducing the transmissibility of the Delta variant of coronavirus.
Mass formation is not similar to hypnosis, that mass formation is exactly equal to hypnosis.
Hall of the Applied Arts University in Vienna.
Hi,
Professor.
Very nice to meet you.
So you are Secretary General of the Global Campus on Human Rights. You're a professor out of Venice, but you're currently based here at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna. What's the headline? Is it legitimate and justifiable to take a subsection of the population and commit them to mandatory house arrest in this way?
Yes, I think so.
You've been a special rapporteur to the United Nations on torture, you've been investigating Guantanamo Bay, you're still, I believe, involved in a project to do with child liberty. These are areas close to your whole career, but when you see this scenario, which is your own Austrian people, a portion of them being kept at home, you don't get a twinge of anxiety about whether this is a new departure for Western democracy, whether this takes us in a dangerous state of emergency that might carry on for too long. Those things, you're not anxious about those?
No, not really.
Germany has announced major restrictions on anyone who's not vaccinated against COVID-19, banning them from all but essential shops in an attempt to fend off a fourth wave of the virus. And the Chancellor Angela Merkel says vaccines may become compulsory from February.
Now, how we can encourage and potentially think about mandatory vaccination within the European Union. This needs discussion. This needs a common approach, but it is a discussion that I think has to be led.
Vaccine take up in parts of the territory?
No, and I'll repeat it. If you are anti-mandate, you are absolutely anti-vax. I don't care what your personal vaccination status is. If you support, champion, give a green light, give comfort to, support anybody who argues against the vaccine, you are an anti-vaxxer, absolutely. Your personal vaccination status is utterly irrelevant. If you campaign against the mandate, if you campaign against people being vaccinated in vulnerable settings, teachers in class, and if you are out there in any way, shape or form campaigning against this mandate, you are absolutely anti-vax. If you say pro-persuasion, stuff it, shove it.
Teenagers who allegedly escaped quarantine at the Howard Springs facility near Darwin have been taken in by police. Following a 6-hour search, Nine's Talia Sav has the latest for us.
Well, we can expect to see some changes implemented here at the Centre for National Resilience after 3 teenagers allegedly escaped. A search spanning several hours was sparked this morning after police say the group scaled a fence and fled Howard Springs around 4:30 a.m. Authorities located the teenagers about half a dozen kilometres away. It's understood they travelled by foot and didn't mingle with anyone else. The 15, 16 and 17-year-old are close contacts of a case from the remote community of Binjari near Katherine.
As of midnight tonight, New South Wales Police will launch Operation Stay at Home. The unprecedented operation will see thousands of police officers from police districts and police area commands across the state working alongside our colleagues from the Australian Defence Force enforcing the strengthened public health orders. 1,400 highway patrol officers will be out and about with their specialist equipment, patrolling back roads, setting up roadblocks, so there is simply nowhere for you to go if you want to breach public health orders.
Fear, but a particularly effective technique is to use waves of terror. Under this technique, the sowing of fear is staggered with periods of calm, but each of these periods of calm is followed by the manufacturing of an even more intense spell of fear. And on the process goes.
The wave of Omicron continues to roll in across the whole of our United Kingdom, with over 780,000 COVID cases today, the highest ever daily number reported.